Stop right there a second, close your eyes, and smell it with me. Hot buttered popcorn from the front of the store, coffee grinding somewhere near the produce, a flash of floor wax, and new rubber from the tire department. That's the America I grew up in. Mid-century Saturday mornings when a store wasn't just a place to hand over money, it was a stage where the whole week came to a happy ending. If you remember even a sliver of that, you're my people. Pull up a stool, chrome if we're lucky, and let me take you back. We always started downtown before downtown meant office towers and parking garages. Back then, the heart of town beat right through the front doors of Woolworths. There were other stores, sure, but Woolworths felt like the lobby to the rest of life. I'd climb onto a round metal stool at the lunch counter, elbows on the cool laminate, and watch the world spin on a silver spindle straw dispenser. The waitress knew my mother's order and my father's coffee, and she pretended not to notice when I stared at the cake domes like they were museum pieces. That first bite of a grilled cheese, edges crisped brown, cheese stretching like taffy, could fix any report card, at least until we got home. If you were a kid then, you learned the rhythm of patience from those counters. You waited, you listened, and you watched. The grill hissed, the milkshake mixer sang. The coin changer at the waitress's belt clicked like a tiny printing press. You could sit there and feel civilized, a junior member of this big American club called Going Out. And when the plate slid in front of you, well, that was a membership card. Mother shopped by feel in those days. Ben Franklin was her second church. Every town had one, and each had a personality. Some with a little soda fountain tucked away, others with a carousel of comic books and a wall of yarn in every color she swore she'd use up this winter. The floorboards creaked in the key of C, the aisles smelled faintly of starch and cinnamon candy, and the owner, usually a local family, knew which teacher preferred thick poster board before the school fair. If you ever bought a goldfish in a plastic bag and then realized halfway to the bus stop that you forgot fish food, you've known terror. Prices weren't just numbers, they were promises. You saw a dime tag and knew it meant you can handle this. That's why they called them 5 and dimes, and that's why we called them ours. Funny thing, a young manager named Sam learned the trade in stores like those, then grew up and convinced the world that low price and big selection could fit under one enormous roof. But even when the new era arrived, nothing replaced the feeling of a clerk saying your name and setting aside the last pack of blue embroidery thread because your mother will want it. By the early 60s, we were all living a little bit in the future. Not the rocket ship future we saw in magazines, but the practical kind. Brighter lights, straighter aisles, and catalogs fat enough to use as a doorstop. Sears was the dream factory. The Wish Book didn't arrive. It landed like a holiday comet, with whole universes circled in red pencil. Dad would crack it open to the Craftsman pages with a reverence usually reserved for church. Mom turned down corners on curtains and bath sets as if the house itself had been promised a new outfit. And we kids, we went straight to the toys, of course, rehearsing for a morning in December when time would bend in our favor. Sears was a city under one roof. Shoes that squeaked on shiny tile, a television department full of glowing windows to other living rooms, and the auto center where you could smell adventure in the rubber. You could get a school blazer, a socket set, and a set of snow tires all before lunch. There was a confidence to that kind of store, like America telling you, we've got it, whatever it is, and we'll sell it at a price that doesn't embarrass you. Sometimes we'd swap the downtown route for a different adventure, the kind lit by fluorescent buzz and the promise of treasure. Zayre, founded in '56, turned bargain hunting into a game. The cart squeaked, the sign shouted, and somewhere past the tower of polyester slacks, you'd discover a table of toys you didn't know you needed. If Woolworth made you feel grown, Zayre made you feel lucky. That strange combination, a clearance sticker and pure possibility, could make an afternoon fly. Ames, born in '58, felt like someone finally thought about the smaller towns. You didn't need a big city to stock up for school. There'd be a rack of affordable dresses, a stack of spiral notebooks, a display of lunch boxes stamped with heroes of the day. We learned the math of responsibility in places like that. A shirt, a pair of socks, and 2 notebooks still left enough for a candy bar on the way out. You didn't pretend to be fancy at Ames. You were practical and proud of it. Hills had the popcorn. That's the headline, and I won't be convinced otherwise. You smelled it from the parking lot. It wasn't just a treat, it was a strategy. Parents bought time with a paper tub and a promise, one slushie if you let me try on 2 more pairs. The real genius, though, was the layaway counter. In a corner where the store felt quieter, families made a plan with the future. A doll in September, a bicycle in October, a final payment in December. No panic, no interest, just patience stacked neatly like boxes in a stock room. That kind of dignity sticks to you. To this day, when I wrap gifts, I can feel the relief my parents must have felt knowing the bill wouldn't bite in January. If you want to talk about magic, you have to talk about service merchandise. The catalog was the spell book. You'd run a finger down the thin paper, note the order number with a stubby little pencil, and hand your slip through the window like you were passing a secret. Minutes later, honest minutes, full of honest suspense, a conveyor belt in the pickup area would rumble to life and deliver your wish in a brown box. I swear, the sound of that belt taught me what tomorrow felt like. Today, we tap a screen and a package appears on the porch. Back then, we watched the future roll in on rollers, and it felt earned. Not every memory glows in neon. Some glow warm and red like the A&P sign at the end of the block. If you shopped in the '60s, you know the smell of 8 o'clock coffee ground fresh while you waited. There was a kind of small talk that lived near that grinder, neighbors trading recipes, teachers buying something for a potluck, kids bouncing ahead with a box of donuts peeking open at the corner. A&P didn't have to be fancy. It was familiar, and familiar was a kind of wealth. We had architecture, too. Safeway's marina-style stores curved their roofs like a smile and put up glass walls that let the sunshine in on the apples. The building told you something before you ever saw a price. We're modern, we're clear, we're open. You didn't think of it as design back then. You thought of it as a good mood you could walk into. And though we didn't use the phrase user experience, Alpha Beta quietly gave us one, lining up categories so logically you could shop the alphabet and be out in time for the ball game. Here's a picture I still keep in my head. Dad's steering wheel big as a ship's wheel, the bench seat slick under our Sunday best, and the skyline of signs rising like a city of promises. Pantry pride, bright, cool air when the paper doors whooshed open. White Hen Pantry, 1965, and suddenly you could pop in for milk and a deli sandwich between the hardware store and getting the car washed. National Tea, reminding us that the world was wider than our zip code, with ideas and products moving across borders long before the word globalization hit the evening news. None of it felt political. It felt practical, life getting a little smoother each season. Let me tell you about money, because the numbers were part of the poetry. A couple of dollars could move mountains if you knew where to push. My mother kept a small envelope in her purse labeled odds and ends. Ben Franklin was where that envelope felt 10 feet tall. At Zayre, a $10 bill made you feel like a general with a battle plan. We didn't talk about budgets like a spreadsheet. We talked about what was left for Saturday, and stores respected that. They put layaway in reach, they printed prices big enough to see, and they kept a little rack of penny candy near the register because they understood childhood better than most committees do. If you were lucky, your town had a lunch counter where the regulars formed a kind of breakwater against the tides of the week. Woolworths again, sure, but sometimes it was a counter inside a drugstore or a corner of a 5 and dime that kept its grill hot. You ordered without looking at the menu, and someone wearing a paper hat called you hon. We learned early that community doesn't always look like a meeting. It looks like refills poured without asking and a slice of pie cut a little generous. Now, I won't tell you every store was a cathedral. Some were honest barns with honest bargains. Food Town was exactly what it said on the sign, food and a town's worth of it at prices that didn't make you shy. You didn't go there to be impressed. You went to be served, and you were. Saturdays were never a straight line. They had detours. Maybe Mom saw a window display at J.C. Penney, and we all agreed she deserved new curtains before company comes. Maybe Dad remembered the mower needed a spark plug, and we zigzagged to the parts counter where a man with grease on his cuff told a joke that made my mother blush and my father wheeze. That's how it worked. Stores weren't just destinations. They were excuses to cross paths with people you wouldn't have otherwise. Folks who lived 5 blocks away but felt like neighbors because you both preferred the same bakery rolls. If you're wondering whether it was all better then, no, not always. Lines existed, and budgets snapped, and sometimes the thing you wanted was out of stock because the truck was late again. But the disappointments had scale. When the clerk said, "Come back Tuesday," there was a Tuesday worth coming back for. When a manager said, "I'll hold one for your boy," you trusted him, and he did. That trust is a currency I miss more than the old quarters with eagles on them. I still carry a few small scenes with me like ticket stubs. The day I stood in Zayre with 5 crumpled dollars, torn between a set of markers and a cheap pair of headphones. The clerk, older than my father, younger than I am now, leaned in and said, "The music will last longer." I bought the markers anyway, because I wanted to draw that day, and drawing felt like telling my own story before anyone else had a chance. Another time, at Service Merchandise, my father and I watched that conveyor belt rumble and spit out a box with his name on it. He tilted his head and said, "Listen, that's the sound of tomorrow arriving on time." Every time my phone pings, ready for pickup, I hear that bell. And there was a veteran at A&P, hat with pins, cart with bread and coffee, who said to no one and everyone, "War teaches you there's nothing small about a Sunday." He poured beans into a bag, tied the top into a tidy twist, and wheeled away slow as a hymn. I think about him when the weeks blur and I forget to stand still. We had our jokes, too. Mother used to say, "If Sears doesn't have it, you don't need it." Dad countered, "If Woolworth doesn't sell it, it isn't fun." My sister had her own wisdom. "If the popcorn machine at Hills isn't running, check the sky. Something's wrong with the weather." Those lines sound silly written out, but they were our traffic signs. They told us where we were and what kind of day we were having. The cars mattered, I suppose, the fins, the chrome, the push-button radios, but mostly as vessels to carry us between fluorescent and neon, between red signs and glass roofs. Seat belts. We had arms across the front bench when Dad hit the brakes too fast. GPS. We had a mental map made of smells and songs. Turn left where the White Hen is. Go straight until you pass the Safeway with the round roof. If you reach the tire department that smells like summer, you've gone too far. People love to argue about when malls began and main streets ended. All I know is that for a good long stretch, they coexisted like cousins who borrowed each other's sweaters. We could have a downtown Saturday and a suburban Tuesday, and wherever we landed, the same principles held: decent prices, clear aisles, a store that felt bright without blinding you, a clerk who understood that you were a person first and a transaction second. If you're still with me, and I hope you are, try this on for size. Imagine your perfect mid-century Saturday. Start with a seat at the lunch counter. Let the steam from a fresh cup fog your glasses. Pay with coins that make the right music against porcelain. Pick up thread at Ben Franklin, markers for the kids because you promised, then drift to A&P, where the coffee grinder hums like a friendly machine. Maybe you duck into Safeway just to walk under that smiling roof and remind yourself the future is supposed to be bright. End at Sears, where an army of boxes promises a house that runs by your will. Drive home with the windows cracked, the car smelling like popcorn and coffee, and a new rubber floor mat you forgot you didn't need. Tell me that's not a good day. And if you want to scold me for wearing nostalgia like a pair of rose-tinted readers, that's fair. Memory edits. That's its job. But even edited, those stores taught us something that never goes out of style. Dignity on a budget, delight without pretense, and a public life where a dozen small kindnesses add up to a town. I want to show you how those same stores quietly trained us for the world we live in now, how catalogs became news feeds, how layaway turned into the kinder parts of modern payments, how a conveyor belt in a pickup room foreshadowed 1,000 little pings on a phone. And I want to visit a couple of places we haven't walked through yet, the ones with names that make your tongue remember the taste of Saturday. You know, sometimes I think the stores weren't just selling us products. They were teaching us how to live in a society that was changing faster than we realized. The catalogs, the aisles, the display windows, they were lessons in patience, choice, and imagination. Sears and Montgomery Ward taught us that waiting wasn't wasted time. It was anticipation. We circled toys we couldn't afford yet, stared at lawn mowers we didn't need yet, and planned futures we hadn't reached yet. It wasn't add to cart. It was someday, and someday was a big part of how we thought back then. Layaway wasn't just a financial tool, it was hope on a payment plan. It said, "We can't have it today, but we will have it." That feeling was powerful. It stretched beyond a store into everything else we did. You saved for college. You saved for a down payment. You saved stamps and a book for a free set of dishes. Waiting made the thing itself feel bigger when it finally arrived. Even the layout of those stores shaped how we think. Alpha Beta's alphabetical aisles weren't just clever, they made shopping feel logical and doable. Safeway's glass walls weren't just stylish, they made groceries feel open and welcoming. And the bright, clear signage in Zayre and Ames wasn't just advertising, it was a way of saying, "We're not trying to trick you. Here's what we've got. Here's how much it costs." There was a kind of honesty in that design, a plain-spoken American quality that I still look for when I walk into a store today. Some places even taught us about the world beyond our town lines. National Tea, when it partnered with Loblaw, quietly reminded us that our little Midwest world was part of something bigger. I remember my mom holding a jar with French writing on it and saying, "Imagine where this came from." That was globalization before we had a word for it, right there next to the Jell-O boxes. And then there was the rise of the convenience store, a phrase that meant something different back then. White Hen Pantry was one of the first, opening in 1965. It wasn't about 24/7 or gas pumps or lottery tickets. It was about knowing that if you forgot milk, you could fix it without a long trip. It was about a deli sandwich that saved you from cooking after work. It was about a neighborhood that didn't close at 5 p.m. That tiny shift changed how we lived. We stopped planning every errand days in advance and started trusting that the world would meet us halfway. What strikes me now looking back is how human all of it was. The clerk at Ben Franklin didn't need a loyalty card to remember your name. The man at the A&P coffee grinder didn't need an app to recommend your favorite roast. Sears didn't need a data profile to guess that a family who bought a lawn mower might also need a hose. People talked, people listened, people noticed. Shopping wasn't a solitary scroll through a glowing screen. It was a conversation, sometimes quick and polite, sometimes warm and meandering, but always a conversation. And those conversations built community. We saw the same faces week after week, and over time, those faces became stories. "That's Mrs. Larkin. Her husband came home from the Navy last year." "That's Mr. Peters. He's saving for his daughter's wedding." "That's Tommy from the high school football team. He stocks shelves here on weekends." A store was a place to run into people, not hide from them, and because of that, you felt woven into something larger, a net that caught you when life stumbled. Of course, the times were changing beneath all that comfort. The suburbs were spreading, highways were stretching, shopping centers were sprouting like spring weeds on the edges of towns. And slowly, the stores of my childhood either grew bigger, merged into chains, or disappeared altogether. Woolworth's lunch counters went quiet. Ben Franklin's stores turned into memories. Even Sears, once so unstoppable, started shrinking under the weight of its own history. But if you think that means they're gone, you're wrong. They live in the way we still crave certain experiences. Why do so many modern grocery stores grind coffee on site again because people miss the smell of 8 o'clock. Why do retailers chase community and storytelling in their marketing? Because we remember how it felt to be known. Why do pop-up shops and farmers markets feel so good? Because they echo that old mix of transaction and conversation we grew up with. I see it in myself, too. I still prefer to walk into a store and hold something before I buy it. I still get a little thrill when a catalog, a real printed one, lands in my mailbox. And I still believe that the best price is the one that lets both buyer and seller shake hands without resentment. That's not nostalgia. That's a philosophy built aisle by aisle, counter by counter, receipt by receipt. If I close my eyes, I can map my childhood town by its stores alone. Woolworth's on Main Street, where the stools spun and the malts were thick. A&P 2 blocks down, the air rich with coffee. Ben Franklin around the corner, its front window full of model airplanes and embroidery kits. Zayre by the highway, where Saturday bargains waited under buzzing lights. Hills with the popcorn, Ames with the back-to-school sales, Sears with its endless shelves of possibility, and White Hen, always open just long enough to save the day. Every stop on that map holds a piece of who we were, a nation building itself one purchase, one conversation, one Saturday at a time. And maybe that's the real reason these memories cling so tight. Because they're not really about the stores at all. They're about us. About the families who scraped and saved, the neighbors who shared a cart when one wheel stuck, the clerks who tucked an extra candy into the bag for a kid with big eyes and small change. So here's what I'd say to anyone who lived it too. We were lucky. We grew up in a time when $5 could buy lunch in a dream, when a store could feel like a second home, when a Saturday spent shopping was about more than what you brought home. It was about who you shared it with. And if you never lived it, well, maybe that's why you're here listening. Because deep down, you know there's something worth holding on to in those stories. Something slower, kinder, more deliberate, something that built us. If I could, I'd take you back for one more Saturday. I'd start with a BLT at Woolworth's, the bread toasted just right. We'd pick up school supplies at Ames and a bag of penny candy at Ben Franklin. We'd stand shoulder to shoulder at the A&P coffee grinder, watching beans turn to powder while neighbors swapped recipes. We'd breathe in the popcorn at Hill's, circle a few pages in the Sears catalog, and grab a sandwich at White Hen before heading home. And as the sun set over the parking lot, I'd tell you the same thing my father told me the day that conveyor belt hummed to life. Listen carefully, that's the sound of tomorrow. Only now I know what he meant. Tomorrow isn't a product, it's a habit. It's the way we gather, the way we hope, the way we build our lives out of ordinary Saturdays. And those stores, those places, were where we practiced it. So here's to the stores that made us, the ones that fed us, clothed us, taught us, entertained us, and connected us. Here's to the aisles that doubled as classrooms, the checkout lines that turned into reunions, the catalogs that doubled as wish lists. Here's to the America that lived between the lunch counter and the layaway desk. It may be gone, but it's not forgotten, because in 1,000 small ways it's still here. Every time we share a smile with a cashier, every time we wait patiently for something worth having, every time we smell fresh coffee and remember where we first fell in love with it. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you're in a store, Whether it's a corner market or a big box giant, you'll stop for a second, close your eyes, and hear it too. The echo of a simpler time, the hum of a conveyor belt, the laughter near the popcorn stand, the faint, sweet sound of America in the making.